I think the concern for me, how the UK position themselves as a leader in blockchain, but in my mind, they're doing things completely the wrong way around. And I think it's a reflection of where we are politically, is how they're dealing with it. So the political direction of the country right now, and I think a lot of the countries that are in crisis are in this similar situation, where you have socialistic, even borderline communistic view of the way government should work and how people shouldn't get rich and all that kind of stuff. So essentially, they're looking at all of the crypto exchanges are going to have an automatic feed into HMRC, into the tax entity in the UK. So if you've given your passport to sign up to an exchange, HMRC will know that you exist there and what wallet is yours. Wherever you send your crypto from a KYC exchange is now completely visible. They can see how much tax you should be paying. They're now integrating an AI system called Connect. And so the repercussions of that information is that now, wherever you send that crypto to any wallet on the blockchain, they will now associate that other wallet as being yours. And it does get worse. I'm going to make it worse in a second.
And we're back. Welcome back to the show, everyone. We have a very special guest this evening, Mr. Lewis Jackson, one of the OGs in the space. He's been at it for a long time. He, along with a lot of the other guests I've had on recently, was certainly a pivotal piece to the puzzle in my formulation of knowledge in the space. I'd say he kind of pioneered breaking down the complex elements of this technology for the layman, which I've tried to kind of do on Instagram the last couple of years. He's a very formative thinker, and I'm just very excited to pick his brains tonight, get a bit more of a backstory into his story, talk a bit more about what he's been up to lately with the concerns over there with the ATO equivalent over here in Australia, which is the HMRC, and a bunch of other stuff. So, Lewis, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you this evening.
Thank you, Nathan. Thanks for being here. And I didn't realize I had played a role in your understanding of all of this. It's kind of, I think that shows my age in the space now. that kind of people have looked at my contribution like that.
You did. I think one of your videos, I think it may have been the one that's like explaining how XRP can mathematically get to 10K, was probably one of the best eureka moment videos that I've had. This was probably a couple of years, nearly 3 years ago now. For that very reason, that you do a terrific job of making it easy for the layman to understand. So it's quite different to a lot of the other more technically proficient voices in the space. No, 100%. I'm not lying when I say that.
Good to hear.
Invaluable. But before we get into some of the more specific questions, I do love to get a little snapshot of the backstory of my guests. And I have never actually heard your genesis story of how you got into the space, and then more importantly, how you stumbled into this technology and XRP. So I'd love you to just share that with the audience to kick things off, if possible.
Sure. I mean, so I think for the most part, there are typical elements of my journey and then atypical elements. Starting with the typical ones is, it's been almost a decade now, probably like 8 years since in crypto so far. So my first experience of a bull run was that 2017, 2018 region. And like everyone else, like I just bought when everyone else was buying. It's a classic story. You buy at the wrong times when you're a beginner, and that's kind of just how it started for me. Luckily, I'm the type of person who would go to the casino with friends or whatever, and I'd bring like £5, and like that would be my cost. That would be the price I would pay for the fun of the evening, and just like. But the thing is, I would never lose more than £5. So like, I had friends who would like go to the ATM and get the money out and then just like and lose it all. But for me, like it was enough fun to pay for £5 and lose that £5. So that's the kind of mentality, the mindset that I brought to crypto. So I entered at the wrong time looking back at it, but it went up and I took my profits. Like I took them straight away, which I think was actually atypical for a beginner, but it wasn't done from a place of like, I know what I'm doing. It was done from a fear place. Like I was fearful of like what was going to happen.
So you turned £5 into 20?
Yeah, basically. Literally, I mean, it wasn't much at all, like really. But yeah, there was some multiples there. But all of it meaningless, basically, in terms of like financially. And I think that's when it moves into like an atypical way of handling things, because as the bear market started and I realized, oh wait, there's a bull market and a bear market, the price is going to go up and down over prolonged periods of time. Uh, I started to be quite reflective, and I've always been very reflective, just as a person. I always get called an old salt. So I reflect a lot about decisions I've made and things that actually went right, and trying to get to the root of why things went wrong or whatever. And I was basically just watching the market from a reflective standpoint and analyzing my own behaviors and emotions and my own decision making in these times, and actually thinking about it like a step further than I think most people would typically do. I think that typically what would happen is you make a mistake and you don't really learn from it. You kind of maybe have to learn that lesson in a harder way to truly learn it. But I reflected for 2-3 years basically from when that happened, and kept a journal, kept writing everything down, what I was thinking and feeling, decisions I made, good ones, bad ones, and formulating an idea of like, what does it mean to actually be good at this, um, without having really a proving ground without having had the proving ground to show that, oh, actually what I've been reflecting on and the decisions I'm now going to make actually work. Then 2020, 21 came around, and that was like that mini kind of fake out bull run in a way for the rest of the market. It was like 20% of the market actually ran and 80% didn't. But fortunately, I was in a position where I was in a lot of the ones that were the 20 percenters that went. And I actually executed on a plan that I'd been creating for like a couple of years based on my reflections. And I did really, really well. It kind of like showed me, oh my goodness, there's actually some real money to be made here. So at that point, I was really into crypto, like so into it. And I had all my friends asking me about crypto and like, what do we do? What do we do? In the end, when you get like 10 friends asking you individual questions, and some of the time it was the same question, I was like, I can't keep doing this, like voice noting you for 10 minutes, my answers to stuff. So I end up making a YouTube video, throwing the YouTube video up, just literally me explaining to my friends, and more than my friends watched that video. And then more than that, watch the next one and the next one and the next one. And we're talking about, not big numbers here, like started with 10 views, which were my friends, and then 100 views, 200 views. And then I fell into that space of kind of like, oh, there are audiences for different types of videos, and I've got a knowledge here, and I've done decently well. Let's just keep doing this and lean on the ones that get more views and stuff. And then I fell into XRP because I think one of my videos was about XRP, and it did well because the XRP community are just like want XRP content. And I made the XRP video that got the most amount of views, and I started leaning into XRP, just doing that more. Only then to realize what XRP truly was, and I think that's the thing that people saw on my YouTube channel, where I was like realizing in real time what XRP was, and that'll be about the time where you saw that video that I made, and just kind of it's less about XRP and more about, oh wait, there's so much more going on here than not even just in finance or XRP, like COVID and all of this stuff that was happening, that I viewed the world completely differently, like days before, and then days after, I'm like, oh my goodness, all this stuff. And I think it was like there was a genuineness to my realization. And I think people enjoyed watching that because they could relate to it too, because they were also
Mm.
going through the same thing. And I think tie in my nature of being like a teacher. Um, there's a way I communicate that I think works for laymen's to understand things. Not like, as you've said, like there's people who are really technical and really understand the coding and all of this, all of the ledgers and stuff. I'm not there, but I fit in right at that layman to knowledge region. And that's kind of where we are now.
Mm. Yeah, you definitely were. I mean, you're very authentic, and I think you are an old soul and reflective. it's good to capture that on this chat because I certainly felt that when I first started watching your content. Um, if you were to go back on that journey a little bit and think of a smoking gun moment in your research or in your realizations, is there anything that pops into mind as a smoking gun for
Yeah,
XRP?
I think there's a couple. So one of the moments is when I saw for the first time the World Bank document that said XRP was um, like a stable coin, essentially, and that allowed me to kind of reframe XRP as something that is there's an underlying role of XRP that doesn't match what the general consensus sees. And that the fact that that definition comes from an entity like the World Bank, or the World Bank in this case, it was kind of like, oh, they're seeing the same technology that we all are, but they've called it something different. And again, it was one of those kind of veil lifting moments where it was like, oh wait, they're really thinking about this, and they thought about it to such a degree where even as someone who's in this so deeply, I didn't see that. Like I didn't see that definition for XRP at that time. Yet they've come to that conclusion. So the only logical and rational conclusion I can come to is that they are really deep in this research, more than me. And they're the World Bank, and they're also taking the stance of like blockchain is scary and all of that stuff. And it's all of these like revelations where you're like, oh, this is not. Then they're actually treating this very seriously, and so I need to treat that wording seriously too. Um, and so that's kind of like a something's going on here. This kind of the smoking gun part. The other element of that is when I really started to dive into ISO 20022. Um, and I was so far into this that I had like old spreadsheets with like tens of thousands of rows in it of all the banks in the commercial banks and everything, and how far along the journey they were to progressing to ISO 20022 and these other frameworks. And I was really like, it was like the Rain Man type of thing. I was like pulling in all this information and like piecing it all together. And I was really like mentally, I was really on it, like really connecting dots, and it was really fun. It was like a level of focus that um reflecting on it now is really, really exciting to be in that focused state. But I was seeing everything move in real time, like these banks are at this date they're going to adopt this thing, so what does this thing mean? Oh, there's a patent associated with this thing. What does that patent mean? Let's get into that. And it was just like seeing how deep it went was very exciting. And I think the deeper it went, the more conviction I gained on, because I was like, oh, I actually know how this is working. And I downplayed my technical knowledge earlier, but I really did know a lot, really technical stuff, in order to explain it to layman's.
Well,
Um,
yeah, for sure. It's bridging the
you know,
gap. You
yeah,
understand it, but
absolutely.
you articulate it
And
for the
like,
layman.
yeah, grading my language in a way to where it's understood. In reality, at the time, I felt very advanced in my knowledge. Yeah, and piecing it all together, just showing the levels and degree to which they were putting effort in, the banks and all of that. It was just kind of, at the very least, intriguing, and at the most, like revolutionary. So I've kind of that was the excitement that I had and the smoking gun moments. But yeah, I mean, there's more, but those are the two that came to my mind.
Mm. And most, more recently, you're obviously speaking a lot about the concerns you have around financial sovereignty and liberty and, some of the frightening stuff that's coming out of, particularly your government, the HMRC. Maybe you could add some flavor to some of the stuff you've unearthed there. Maybe we start with the HMRC. So just to rehash for everyone, that's like the ATO equivalent here, or the IRS, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, just unpack that a little bit to set a backdrop.
Yeah, I think the concern for me, for the most part, is just how the UK, and I don't know how Australia positions themselves, but the UK position themselves as a leader in blockchain. Like We're going to be the leader of the world in blockchain and crypto. That might be true in terms of what they know and the things that they're implementing. Like the fact that they are implementing things is a sign of being thinking forward. But in my mind, they're doing things completely the wrong way around. And I think it's an indication, a reflection of where we are politically is how they're dealing with it. Our government are dealing with crypto in a way that makes sense for the political direction of the country. So the political direction of the country right now, and I think a lot of the countries that are in crisis are in this similar situation, where you have kind of a socialistic, even borderline communistic view of the way government should work and how people shouldn't get rich and all that kind of stuff. If you have that mindset as a government, you will take actions like they are taking now. It actually only makes sense. It's frustrating because that's not the way I view the world personally. But what they're doing is surveillance heavy. So essentially what they're looking at our bank accounts. They're looking at all of the crypto exchanges are going to have an automatic feed into HMRC, into the tax entity in the UK, automatically. So right now, essentially, HMRC would have to file what's called a Section 36, which is basically a notice to the exchange to specifically request information about a specific investor on their platform. That's how it's currently done. As of January the 1st, 2026, there will be no request needed because it will be an automatic data feed between any exchanges that have KYC, which is basically all the legit ones, into HMRC. So if you've given your passport, you've given your driving license to sign up to an exchange, HMRC will know that you exist there and what wallet is yours. And so the repercussions of that information, and it does get worse, I'm going to make it worse in a second. The repercussions of them knowing that wallet address is that now wherever you send that crypto to any wallet on the blockchain, they will now associate that other wallet as being yours. So have tons of people who are saying kind of like, well, if I put it in a cold storage wallet, it's safe. No, it's literally one of the easiest things in blockchain to be able to trace. Like they can do it with their eyes closed and they won't even, it's going to be all automated. It's going to be that easy. So wherever you send your crypto from a KYC exchange is now completely visible. They can see ultimately how much tax you should be paying and also cross-referencing that with, have you actually declared that? And if you haven't, a flag gets raised and fines get issued. And the fines can range anywhere between 0% if you actually self-declare, all the way up to 100%, which is like, if your tax bill is £10,000, the fine on top of that would be an extra £10,000. So, and that's small numbers compared to what most people are going to experience in the tax world after this bull run and after previous bull runs if you haven't declared. Now, the way it gets worse, and this is where I think it gets into like Big Brother type world, is that as part of that data stream that goes to HMRC, they're now integrating an AI system called Connect. Connect will watch your social media. And you might think, what on earth does that even mean? How is that relevant? Well, they're going to see if your tax return, let's say it says your income is $50,000, right? But if your lifestyle shows you like, oh, I just bought a 10K watch, or I just went on holiday to the Seychelles or something, all inclusive, they're looking at that and by context, using that context as data to inform a disparity. So like, is the amount that you're declaring a reasonable amount that goes with the images that you're putting out online? So does your lifestyle cost more than you have declared to us? And if that is the case, then this is the kind of the nail in the coffin. They have the ability to be able to go back in time, not just start from January 2026. They have the ability to go back in time to look at all of your tax years up to 20 years ago.
Wow.
And that's before Bitcoin. So everything you've ever done in crypto, even if you were Satoshi Nakamoto, they can go back and see it, and plus they can go back even further. Um, and the only way they could go back further is to look at your bank data from that time period, if you even had a bank at that time. Like, that's so long ago. So I think it's a massive intrusion of privacy. I can also make the argument as to like why they're doing it, because it makes sense. If their business is to extract the most amount of tax from people, then they're doing the right thing. I just fundamentally don't like the journey that they've taken to get there. And it's kind of knocked the wind out of the sails of many of the incentive of people to come and make some money in this innovative new spaces. And it's the exact same reason why the UK, I don't know about Australia, but it's the UK has the most amount of millionaires leaving every year right now. It's the top of the list. Like, there's no other country in the world that has more millionaires leaving right now. And if we are going to be we are millionaires in the making, right? At scale, because of crypto, they seem to be doing everything they can to disenfranchise people who not only have money, but can make some money. And if you do that, it gets very dangerous, because the people with the money who pay for the infrastructure via taxes, they leave. You don't have the infrastructure for taxes. You don't have good roads. You don't have safety. You end up, things aren't maintained in your culture and society, and it starts to crumble. And then what are you left with? You're left with, oh wait, we're left with where we are right now. Like, literally where we are right now is the result of all of that. And so, it's very worrying. I don't know the solution to it, but something needs I think it all stems from the political stance, and it makes sense from that view as well.
Yeah, it is concerning. I mean, look, Australia is a little old island. We don't have our population's quite small, but even here, it's like we basically just copycat what you do. We're obviously in the monarchy, and I actually just got back from 3 months traveling around work and also bit of pleasure, but meeting with people in Cyprus, Malta. So I actually spent a lot of time in Cyprus assessing the viability of setting up a tax residency there. I had a couple of friends there that have moved. One of them follows me, very knowledgeable guy who has based himself there now, for the very reasons you've just described. Because in Australia, we've also got the unrealized capital gains being taxed on our super. So our superannuation, which is, the 401k equivalent. I'm not sure what it is in the UK, but so a litany of people I know have bailed just for that very reason. We're obviously a fair bit younger, so most of my investments aren't through. I don't even have much super, to be honest, because I've always worked for myself. But I assessed it, and I think I will add this to this discussion because it's an important point. Ultimately, for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's always going to boil down to your quality of life. And fortunately for us in Australia, and particularly where I live in a more rural community south of Brisbane, it's still very preserved and it's beautiful. And it's, we don't have immigration problems. The infrastructure's solid. It's like the world probably was back in the 70s. And I love it. And I think just for people that are listening in this chat and thinking, oh, maybe I should bounce and move over. At the end of the day, if you love where you are and you're not willing to spend 3 months, which is what it would take per year to live in Cyprus, to be a non-dom resident, then, don't leave if you really love where you live. But if you're getting encroached with all these privacy concerns and civil liberties being pulled, then, it becomes a different story. But I thought it'd be worth adding that in because
No, you
that's where
make
I landed.
you make a very good point about quality of life. The difficulty, and there's like the issue is the quality of life that you experience here in the UK, for example, it's forced upon you for that quality of life to be in your head, like a perceived quality of life. So what I mean by that is your happiness and enjoyment and subjective feeling of quality of life is entirely upon you to dictate that. So, for example, there are two versions of me. Version number one of me, not A or B, it's not better or worse, is I live in a mansion. I've got 5 cars outside. I don't even care about cars, but having 5 of them would be cool. There's that version of me that says, "Oh, that is quality of life." But there's also a side of me that is like, okay, we live in this, we literally live in a cottage, and it's like it's not big, but we love it, and that is more like I have created a quality of life in my head to say, okay, I like my situation right now. But who knows whether that is my perception of my life because of the constraints and the variables in my environment that keep me down. Do you know
You're
what I mean? Like almost like
institutionalizing your perspective. It's an institutionalized perspective.
correct.
Like
So
you're Stockholm syndroming your own perspective.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think about that and I think, okay, what is quality of life then? And I think you're
Lots of
right.
golf.
Yeah, just being on the golf course, making a birdie, like this is all we want. But if you look at like Norway or Sweden, Denmark, the taxes are incredibly high, but the quality of life is also very high, like objectively. You're not forced to think, okay, I have to have a positive mindset today. It's like the environment is good. However, here, I feel like I have to bring it upon myself to be content and happy and pleased with life because the environment isn't doing that for me. And I'm not saying one or the other is better or worse, because it's always good to have a positive mindset, but you can certainly be helped in that positive mindset and bolstered in that positive mindset if the environment itself is also a high quality of life. There's a little distinction there, but I think you're absolutely right about quality of life. That's the determining factor.
Well, I was always a city boy, Sydney till mid-20s, and I thought that was my best version of life. Living in Sydney, it's all I knew. It's a pretty beautiful city, but it was pretty overpopulated. And then COVID pushed me out because we were postcode lockdown. So if you left your postcode, you could go to jail. It was one of the harshest lockdowns in the world. So I was like, you know what? I'm not complying with this. I'm leaving. And sure enough, I left to where I live now in the Northern Rivers, rural, but still enough here. And much like Sweden or Norway, like we've got nature everywhere. I've got cheap golf. I can go to the golf course when I want. I can go do my hobbies. There's no traffic. Everything's accessible. There's not too many people around. Everything's cheap. I'm like, oh, well, where's this been my whole life? It's because, as you said, I was institutionalized to thinking Sydney was the bee's knees, and now I know that it's not. And everything changed. So, yeah, it's an interesting topic. It is a really tricky one that I think a lot of people are going to have to reflect on and weigh up over the coming years, particularly those that have the financial, I guess, leverage at the end of this. But yeah, something we could go on for a long time. Do you have any, before we shift gears, do you have any ingenious sort of hacks or tricks or tips that you've come across over the years for people listening that they can mitigate or manage the tricky realm of taxes better?
I think first is like an acceptance of, well, there's a couple of things. There's an acceptance that tax will come. Like remove the idea that you're going to avoid taxes. Just don't even entertain it because you will be disappointed. And that's just, when you go through disappointment over and over and over again, it's just like demoralizing, and it removes your enthusiasm for investing, and you don't want to do that. The second element of this is that, and this is more of a tip, like if you're going to move abroad to avoid taxes, or mostly it's just mitigate taxes, because even in Dubai, there's some taxes that you have to pay. You have to go away for more than 5 years. This isn't like I'll go away for a season and then I'll come back, because in the UK, and I'm sure it applies everywhere else, is that if you return back within 5 years, you are liable to pay all the tax that you should have paid in those 5 years to the UK or your country. So when you're thinking about moving, this is a serious lifestyle change. Like this is a life change to move. It's not a season of your life to go and move. This is like a 5-year chunk. And depending on how old you are, that's a season. But um, I think the older you get, the harder it gets to justify moving. But also, and this is going to be, contrary to what most people will expect from me, but I've been to Dubai. I've seen it. I didn't like it. Uh, it was a very clinical kind of fake environment to be in. It's not just not me. Um, Once I got back from Dubai, I realized, oh wait, in the UK, there are lots of things that actually I'm happy to pay tax for. Like there's a reason I pay the tax. There's a reason that we pay tax because I look outside and there's green spaces everywhere. Like Dubai has none of that, and if it does, it's astroturf or manufactured. Like it's just not real. We have to be on a golf course where they're watering it like all day to get the grass to be there. Um, it's not you're paying for something. You're paying for this like you're paying for that the environment where it's like, oh, there's real people here. We actually have real neighbors who like act like neighbors. And in Dubai, it's all transactional, and there's something that you are very happy to pay tax for, and that's kind of what I've realized. So I guess the message here is the big hack is try to view things more positively. Um, like look for the silver lining, look for the positive in things. As bad as this all is, and you can very quickly get into algorithms of negativity and polarization. It's very easy to do that, and I've been there. But it's a lot more life is a lot more manageable and a lot more enjoyable when you do look for positives, and your actions will reflect that positive outlook as well. If you're negative all the time, you will take actions that reiterate the negativity, and you just end up in a position where you're no fun to anyone, you're no fun to yourself. And it's just kind of, I can see it in your eyes. Actually, I see things in people's eyes. Like I think it's this part of people's eyes. I can see like overall positive outlooks and hope in people.
Mm.
um and I see that in your eyes. I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but you can also see it in people when hope has been lost. And I think hope is lost in people and it's visible in people when they perpetuated negative behaviors, um, and perpetually entertain negative uh, conclusions to things. So yes, we are going to have to pay tax, but look, there's a reason we pay the tax, and you can make a great argument for why those things are positive too. So that's my view.
Yeah, good summary. And we'll shift a little bit here. Do you think we're coming to the end, or are we at the conclusion of another 4-year cycle, or do you view this time as different, mainly because of the clear institutional and governmental participation?
I have a serious amount of thoughts on this topic. I'm not going to be able to communicate all of it in a succinct way. Like I'm working on a massive project to communicate my thoughts on this. Like I'm serious, massive project. So what I will say is that all of what you've said, I think, is mostly accurate. And some of those things were opposites. So I do think we are at the tail end of the bull run. I think what we are looking at is in the region of $9 to $11 for this bull run. I think that will be followed by a bear market. But I also think this time is different. What I mean by that, and this is going to be the one that gets all the clicks. I think this is going to be different because it's not going to go as high as people expect this time around. I think there's a view that everyone has, and I'm aware this is contrary to it because I'm very involved in the XRP world. I think there is an expectation that XRP will this time around just explode $100, $1,000, whatever. And I think for the most part, that's based on my understanding of the hundreds of people that I've actually talked to in person, there's a general consensus that that's going to happen, and in the short term too. And so if we accept that as what everyone expects, I don't think that is going to be the case. In fact, I think over time, what we start to see as institutions involve themselves more is that we get less volatility and less scope for us to make significant money. So my theory is I don't mean to be alarming to everyone. My theory is that institutions at scale need XRP to be stable, certainly more stable than it is right now. Because what happens is, having dived into these businesses and the decisions that they make, the banks and everything, they have a real headache with reconciliation. So what I mean by that is, a transaction goes through, and if you send $1,000 in XRP and it's 1,001 cent, or it's $999.99 when it arrives, they now have to do an extra process. There's an extra piece of data that they need to add into it to say there was a fee, there was like a burn rate. And so there's like an extra thing that they have to do. So when you add on top of that, the fact that in the 5 seconds, even if it's minuscule, the price of XRP will move, there's another layer of frustration for the banks. And you can talk about regulation, you can talk about how it's been suppressed by the SEC and everything. Do you know, I don't think that's true. And it's a very contrary approach. I actually think it's because of the fluctuation of the price that adds too much complication for them and headache for them to reconcile after the fact, that they're actually looking for other, is there any other technology that we could use that doesn't do that? And I think it's like, okay, how do I do it? Okay, we've got XRP here. We know what it does. There's some volatility. We know what we're getting into because there's some frustration there. Yes, maybe about the SEC case, but mostly about like when we transact it, it moves a little bit, and we have to do an extra thing to like reconcile that. What else do we have? We're keeping this here, but what else do we have going on? Like, is there any other solution to that? And for me, when I kind of logically thought about that, I was like, oh, that's perhaps a little bit concerning, because you would like to think that XRP is going to be treated as this, this is the standard, this is the stable coin, as the World Bank says. But if it is the stable coin, does it not have to be stable? And then the question is, what is the definition of stable then? Is there a percentage of up and down? Is there a percentage of volatility that can still fall in the realms of the definition of stable?
What about just while I remember, because I'm following here, and I do agree with you. I mean, there's a famous video of Brad Garlinghouse back in 2017 sitting down with the CEO of Swift, and they have a back and forth on this very point, because the Swift CEO is like, well, we would never use this because it's fluctuating too much and that's a headache. And he's like, well, yeah, once there's more liquidity in it, the fluctuation's less and less, blah, blah, blah. However, if you're using, we know that stable coins are going to now take over main stage, drive huge demand for the US debt, and probably going to fill at the surface, at appearance level, face value, the majority of the demand and usage from institutions, whether it's JPM coin, Bank of America coin, whatever it is. The kicker, though, for me, is they still don't have enough liquidity in their respective stable coins to settle astronomical amounts of value seamlessly in destination fiat. The only way to do that at scale is to have a neutral liquidity pool to draw from. So does that settlement that you're describing, because I don't think it'll actually work like that. I think in the end, they're going to probably leverage mostly stable coins. They're still going to need that liquidity engine to suck liquidity out of at huge, huge scale, not small scale, huge. So how does that play in?
So I'm so happy that you've said this, because I was worried about mentioning this this argument about the stable coins, because this is the big project I'm working on, about how stable coins are actually, like you said, taking main stage, and that really does impact things in a longer scale, longer time frame, with these big price predictions, because I'm going to go all over the place here now. And I don't mean to. So
No, go for it.
Oh man, I'm trying to piece all this together. Okay, so what you have is a situation where we are involved in XRP and we need volatility to make some money. That we don't make money without the volatility, whether that's up or down. You can long or short. But with this demand that we have for XRP, albeit I would say reduced now, because stablecoins are taking center stage, and $1,000 sent is $1,000 received without that extra step. That's kind of where I was going with that. As they continue to dabble in XRP and build up reserves for that surplus of transaction volume that is needed, as you have alluded to, there is this extra amount of transactions that are needed, and that surplus will come in the forms of unbanked payment channels, payment corridors. It will come in the form of, we need this amount of transactions to do. We've only got this many stable coins. We need to basically use XRP for the rest. That's all valid, but let's remember, it's XRP now is, in my view, going to handle these payment corridors that don't want to trust US dollar-based stablecoins, right? So that's narrowed down the usage of XRP, and this is not saying XRP is useless, not at all. It's actually made for this. It's made for these payment corridors that have lower liquiidity,
more exotic payment corridors.
Yeah, the big payment corridors like UK to US, Japan to UK, those big ones, they're mostly going to use stablecoins, in my view. Only when those transactions go more than they have liquidity for in stablecoins, then they will use XRP. And I think that's definitely the case for South Korea, for Japan, for the UK, I think even the US. But it's surplus. And so your dependence on big price points for XRP has to now logically purely be related to the degree to which that surplus goes. How high does that surplus go? Because, for example, if we're using, let's do easy numbers. $1 million is how much liquidity they have for stablecoins in a specific payment corridor, let's say. Now, if that transaction volume goes up to 1.5 million, okay, XRP is being used for that extra half. But if the belief is that surplus is quadrillions, then the price of XRP in that environment with that amount of surplus is massive. But so as a conclusion, logically, if you are thinking about the price of XRP in the long term, it has to be directly correlated to your belief in that surplus. To what degree is that surplus? So what the best use of our time right now should be determining how much liquidity do they have, and what is the likelihood that the surplus is far above that and sufficiently above that to create a price for XRP that I believe is meaningful. That's actually the calculation that needs to be run. And I've run numbers as well, but forgive me for the I don't remember the exact calculation.
No, that's fine.
But what you end up with is when you have XRP being used in these payment corridors that are unbanked payment corridors, maybe even a little bit of surplus on these main corridors where there's not enough liquidity in stablecoins, you get an XRP that's like $30 based on my view of that surplus. So it begs the question, yes, we can talk about the mathematical legitimacy of a $10,000 XRP. But if we're reading the room right now, logically, rationally, just reading the room, stablecoins are taking a big chunk of this. XRP will be used more specifically for its speciality, which is those cross-border payments in underserved payment corridors. It's actually, the more it does its job, the lower the potential valuation of XRP. Because
what about the
we had thought, sorry, one final thought.
No, go.
We had believed that XRP would do the job that stablecoins is now doing. And so when you look at that, you think, I think that was the narrative certainly for a long time. But when you look at it like that, you think, okay, yes, these big price predictions are achievable, possible, because of the frame in which we looked at XRP and what it was going to do. But reading the room as time goes on, stablecoins certainly are taking a big chunk of that. And therefore, we have to kind of look at, okay, what's left for XRP? There's loads left. Like, imagine going to $30 right now. It's incredible gains. Like this, that's life-changing that's life-changing growth. So last thing I want is for people to be disappointed from this conversation. It's like, no, this is actually a really rational, reasonable look, I believe, at the environment.
I agree,
Carry
and
on.
I think it's really good to ask these questions and show a bit of humility with the narrative, because there is a lot of big numbers being thrown around. I've never been one for throwing around any number, to be honest. But what I will say is, and I'd like your thoughts on this as a follow-up. The stablecoins, as we've said, they are taking center stage, but there's still one problem that remains in my mind that they do not solve. And the JP Morgan head of digital assets, I can't remember his name. There's another very infamous video that circulated about him describing that they settle over like $7 trillion a day. And he references how USDC has like what, $200 billion market cap. Simply put, he says stablecoins cannot solve our settlement problem. And a lot of this revolves around the fact that even if you go into a world where all these institutions are using their preferred stablecoin, you still need to settle in the destination fiat, which requires that you hold a significant amount of money in that Nostroro account in the destination fiat. So a big part of the original thesis for XRP was to remove the need for the Nostroro. So if JPM is trying to settle with SBI in Japan and they want to send 100 billion or 200 billion, right now we know that wouldn't work. They don't have the fiat to be able to support that within seconds, right? But with XRP, can they not do that in future state? Because the destination fiat is where I still get lost. They can't fix that with stablecoins.
No, so you're right in that case, but what typically happens is that they truncate payments. So if they have $1 billion liquid and they want to send 100 billion, they can send 100 1 billions like over time in stables. It's not ideal. Like, you'd like to be able to do that reliably in one go. But I think I think there are systems around that. But also if speed and urgency is a key, absolutely, then we need to use XRP to do that. There's no other asset aside from stablecoins that can handle something like this. In fact, that is perfectly suited to XRP. The issue is that the way it would work is that the fiat currency is converted to XRP for those 3 to 5 seconds, and then it's sold again. So there's no holding of the asset. What that would do in terms of, for those 3 to 5 seconds, what it would do to the price would be interesting to see, its impact on supply. But it would be such a temporary thing. What you really need for XRP to go up is to basically replace Nostroro accounts with a basket of crypto assets. What they won't do is just buy XRP as the basket. I've just learned that over time. They choose a basket for a reason. It's not just one asset. These are very risk off entities. So they'll buy a basket of assets, and that'll be Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, it'll be Solana, the ones that we all are familiar with. And they'll hold those. Like, that's the best case scenario. And hopefully, if we're talking about billions of dollars that are going to be held in these baskets to replace Nostroro, it's essentially changing the asset from fiat Nostroro to a crypto Nostroro, for lack of a better way of putting it. You have to hope that the percentage they put in XRP results in a large purchase. Mm-hmm. So if they need to store $100 billion in this Nostroro basket of cryptos, well, maybe like 20 billion of that is XRP. And that would have a huge impact on the circulating supply of XRP and therefore the price. So when you're looking at like best case scenarios, I would say that's along the lines of a best case scenario where they're using XRP for the surplus. They're also holding XRP, which is the key price driver, in a basket of assets. And they're using XRP the way it was supposed to for remittances in underserved, underbanked countries, payment corridors. Ideal situation. And if all of that comes together, all of it, we might be looking at, $100 XRP. And that, again, is based on my assumption of how great that surplus is above the liquidity that they have in stablecoins.
No, it's very rational. And I love that we're picking it apart and looking at it from a conservative lens. One final point on this, just quick extra question is, so we've talked about this cross-border sort of and remittances side of it. What do you see the potential impact being from integration within the DTCC and settling the back end of the stock market, et cetera, tokenized real world assets? Like, what does that do in your equation?
So I think tokenized real world assets do a fantastic job for keeping XRP out of circulation. And that's what you want for price driving. The way I truly treat this tokenization and derivatives, all this kind of stuff, stock market stuff, is I view that as what a bonus that would be if XRP were to play a real role in that. And it is it's the variables that are like, oh, what if this? That's so exciting about XRP, which is why I'm still like, XRP is like 80% of my portfolio, and my portfolio is like 98% of my entire net worth. So I don't have a pension. Like, this XRP essentially is my pension. So don't get it twisted, everyone. Like, this is not I'm not like, what do you call it? I'm not being accused of treason here and going like moving away from XRP. I'm still very much in this, and it's so exciting to think, okay, what about the stock market? What about these tokenized real world assets? Because Ripple's moving heavily into tokenized real world assets, by the way, especially in Hong Kong. It's incredible what they're doing, and it's due to those variables that I remain excited about XRP. Not just, and this is above that $30 mark that I'm talking about here. This is a variable that could greatly impact things, but only because tokenization requires liquidity and storing assets to match the value of the tokenized assets. And it will always come back to this, because this is what essentially I've built my channel now and my business on, is this idea of, we need strategies to think about this stuff. Strategies for taking profits, but also, importantly, strategies for holding on, because real world assets could have a real impact on the price of XRP. And I don't want to take too much profit, because I want to participate in those potential things that can happen. But I don't want to not take any profits as well, because I've got a life that I need to enjoy. And we started off this podcast with like, there's like a level of life enjoyment, satisfaction with life that you need. You don't want to sacrifice the most valuable asset here, which isn't XRP, everyone. It's not, it's time. Like, that's the valuable asset that we have. And so in order to respect my time, to provide myself with a fulfilled life in the short term and the long term, I need to think strategically about this. I need to create a plan of action that's not based on what you say, not based on what people have heard me say. It's based on how I see the world, how I'm able to stand risk, and how I'm able to tolerate stress. Who I am as a person has to be reflected in the way I handle my assets. So for me, that ends up being a certain amount of take profits and a certain amount of hold. And that's all dependent on my conviction of these variables versus the opposite of those variables, which is like, nothing happens. What if nothing happens? But what if everything happens? We need a plan that is structured in such a way to where you're winning either way. So that's a long way of saying, if we do get tokenized real world assets and that makes a massive impact on XRP, I mean, I'm winning. We're all winning. If it doesn't do that, and it only goes to $30 or only goes to $9 this bull run, I'm winning as well. And that, I don't think most people can say that, because when we get to $9, if the vision is $1,000 and I won't sell any until it's $1,000, well, then there's a real situation where there are winners and losers. because the loser holds for an indefinite amount of time for an unknown value and sacrifices an unknown amount of their life in the short term being wrapped up in it all. Whereas I, with a good strategy, will be enjoying my life, perhaps modestly, and that's fine, but I'll have a higher enjoyment of life because the financial stresses will be gone. But also in my back pocket, if this thing explodes, like I'm also
You've
with
got
you
great
participating.
exposure.
So that's where I've settled now. And it's annoyed people, I think, but I also view it as like, this is quite reasonable, and it's also, this is how I view my life and what I want for my life. So everyone's different, but that's how I'm approaching it.
I've always admired you for that. I mean, I've watched your stuff for a long time, and I think it's really prudent and important point to make. It was actually my next question, to go into a bit of your thoughts and strategies around off-ramping / take profit, and you've illuminated it there. And everyone is
ask
different.
away. Like, this is the stuff I really love. That stuff.
Yeah, I think everyone's different, and you're spot on. I say it to I've been open with my community that all my peripheral assets that I have, I will sell. I will be selling all of them this run, but I personally won't be selling any XRP because it is the majority of my portfolio as well, but I'm really interested in getting, I don't have a need to have a huge amount of capital come in within the next probably year or so from XRP, and I would like to see the options available for collateralizing it and potentially using it to get a house. But if that doesn't work out for another 4 years, well, then at least I'm still going to have a fair whack of capital from these peripherals that I sell all of.
Yep.
And, you're spot on. You can't just go in blindly and go, I'm just going to hold the way through. And yeah, the instos are coming this time, so it's going to be sweet. It's never coming back down. Yeah, it's just stupid. So I'm glad you brought that point up, and I think everyone should really just have some introspection that are listening and think about what's right if you've got significant exposure to these assets. And for people who don't, and you might only have like 500 or 1,000 XRP, if you don't need the extra money, just hold on to it. I don't know, like that's probably smart as well. But
there's other factors. There's like, in reality, how much do you actually want to be involved in this? Is it worth? Is $1,000 portfolio worth the effort to grow it to 2,000? Or is it more worth maybe upskilling yourself, trying to do something to make more money so that you can buy more crypto? Like, that's a better use of time. And so in that instance, yes, buying and just holding and not doing anything, probably that's the thumbs up strategy for you, because the priority isn't the growth of their assets naturally from their own growth. The growth of the assets needs to come from your increase in buying more. So as a result, you need to upskill yourself. You need to get a side hustle, like build a business, do something to increase capital, to increase your portfolio, and then any changes in the portfolio will become meaningful.
Exactly. And just in closing, because I'm conscious we've been going for an hour, 2-part question. Firstly, what drives you to do what you do daily? I'll get to the second part of the question after that.
Okay. So my overwhelming kind of mission in the background here is I want to see people realize their potential. And that sounds quite abstract and quite zoomed out. But when you look at kind of what my vision is for my business moving forward, like in the next 10 years or so, it certainly revolves around this awakening moment of your own ability and your own potential. And then actions that you can take to, in the quickest amount of time, change your behaviors to actually see your potential come to fruition. I think the biggest pollutant that we have in society right now is this lack of belief in oneself. I truly think we can do basically anything we actually desire to do. I've seen that multiple times in my own progression where I'm like, oh wait, why was this ceiling here in the first place? Like, I've just blown past that ceiling. Why did I ever think that was the limit of my life? And you do that enough times and you just realize, wait, the potential is wherever I set it. So um, there's nothing that gets me more excited, and more excited than XRP is seeing people like realize, oh wait, my potential is further than I realized. And then kind of, I would love in the future to be able to help people do that. And this is
Beautiful.
part of it, right? The exit strategy part of it that I do with the business is helping people realize that, oh wait, all of this stuff that was too complicated to start with, actually I have the capacity to do a lot more with this than I realized. And really it's just building the finance arm of this bigger plan that I have for potential.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful. And where do you see the end game being? Not just from, it's a bit of a loaded question, but not just for the crypto space and, you know, the digital financial landscape, but I guess the geopolitical intersection as well. So obviously there's a big technocratic push behind a lot of these technologies, and we've got some murky waters there. What's the end game? Where do you see us landing in 5-10 years as
I see the
humanity?
I see the end game as being the ability to remove yourself from society that we currently, how we currently define it. So I'm talking about, there will be a massive wave of people buying large amounts of land with the assets that we've accumulated in the traditional system and using that money to separate from the reliance on governments. I think the where this is all headed is curated communities. So, you know, I buy some land in the outback and say, okay, I'm selecting these people that share my worldview, and we're all going to build a community. We're going to build up a bunch of houses, a school, a fire station, and we're going to have our own kind of sovereign, maybe not officially sovereign, but our own self-sufficient community with like-minded people. And I think the participating in this crypto world and participating in the AI world, especially if you're an entrepreneur and integrating AI in a way that's meaningful, this is where the big money is going to be made over the next 10 years. And when that money is made, the priority is not going to be what cars can I buy, where can I travel in the world. It's going to be how big of a piece of land can I get, and do I know the people that I want to live around that I can invite to be there as well. Raising your own cattle, everyone's eating the food that you grow, you know, you're self-sufficient. I think that's going to be like the priority for a lot of the wealthy people, and you can already see it happening. You get people like Jake Paul, as controversial as he is. He bought like a 1,000 acre plot of land somewhere, and they're all doing it. Bill Gates is buying all the land. That's probably more nefarious than Jake Paul. But all of these people with lots of money, what are they doing? They're not buying cars anymore. They're buying land, because land is going to be the only way to kind of separate yourself from the craziness. And in a way, if you have the ability to buy the land, you can also control who you're surrounded by. And I think there's a lot of people, especially in the XRP space, who share the same worldviews. And I think we're going to see communities pop up that are like that.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. And finally, I might as well add this in. I was going to do it next show, but I'll do it this one. Any questions for me? One question, any questions?
Interesting, because I'm not so exposed to YouTube anymore. So like, I don't really know what's going on. I guess what I would be most interested in hearing is, with everything that we know about XRP, and I feel like what we all know is everyone like has a shared understanding of what XRP is. There's like almost like an exhaustion of our understanding. Like everyone knows what everyone knows. Is there anything right now, considering how repetitive the XRP world is in terms of like that we know what's going on? Is there anything that's exciting you right now in XRP the most?
Oh, well, for me, I don't know if you're particularly religious or not, but I'm Christian. And I what excites me is the biblical lens and actually linking it to biblical prophecies and a lot of the stuff. Because I got into this space through a very strange event.
Okay.
Before I was agnostic at the time. So for me, that's what's been the additional excitement layer is being, and I couldn't, honestly, there's maybe offline I could articulate it, but I've done a video with, you've probably seen him, Not Financial Advice Crypto, the guy that does the riddle decodes.
Yeah.
I had a podcast with him probably about a month ago. It was one of the first ones I did, and it went really, really well. And we got a bit more esoteric and riddle focused, and also just kind of tried to link in a bit of biblical prophecy. And for me, that's what really lights me up at the moment. And it actually dovetails off the point you just made, because I do think we're heading towards that type of end game. And I think it comes from the liberation of the chosen people in the end time harvest, which is biblically prophesized. But it's harvest for the ones that can see. The veil and the curtain is lifted. And I think it's no coincidence that very select individuals have not only just made it this far, but can actually see the bigger picture. Because we are a pretty isolated community. I mean, there's less than, I've said it before, less than probably 300,000 significant holders on Earth. We are not saturated in the majority of the market with the materialistic, flashy purpose behind why we want to make money. Doesn't matter if you're religious or not. We all seem to have a very similar moral compass and ethical, I guess, groundedness. And we all seem to find the beauty in the simpler things. And just anecdotally, I'm sure you've experienced that over your years in the space. And I haven't been in it as long as you, but just in my 2 years being vocal about it. I mean, I've been in it longer, but being vocal about it and the audience that I've got on Instagram and the people I deal with, the anecdotal evidence for this notion is alarming. It's unbelievable. And I personally believe that the end game is quite simple. The malevolent side of things will try to infringe, control, remove civil liberties, but the one key piece of the narrative that I get so excited about is they will completely underestimate the power of the, let's say, 300,000 people that get through the other end of price appreciation, even if it is $30, still significant for those 300,000 people. And what that will do with a collective of people in such strong alignment with good moral compasses to their narrative. And that's what I hold hope for. That's what I firmly believe in. I have complete faith that we'll all get there. And I'm excited for it, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, what is there not to be excited about? I do think I can certainly, like, I'm on board with you with the general idea that there is a wealth transfer occurring, and the people that will participate in that at scale will end up being a community of people with a lot of pulling power, with shared views, and those shared views multiplied by the pulling power, or the purchasing power, will have a great impact on the world. Certainly, I'm on board with on board with that. And I'm Christian too. I think where it starts to go into like gematria, it loses me a little bit.
I love the gematria. I do it for the views, Lewis. Don't worry.
Look, it's so interesting, and there's people who I know who do like remote viewing and all kinds of stuff. Like, I love hearing about it because and looking at Saturn moving and like solstices and all this kind of stuff, and like I can't get my head around it, but I'm always entertaining the idea because it's like there's probably truth in a lot of what's being said here, and it's just kind of again, all comes back to, with all of this stuff and all the excitement and all the gematria and remote viewing of the FBI or whatever it is, or I just think if I have a good strategy, I'm going to benefit from all of this regardless of wherever it goes. And that's kind of like been the biggest sigh of relief for me, is the moment that you see like the plan in place, because it's like, okay, now everything is entertainment. I can watch things not from a dependency view, but from a entertainment view, and just kind of watch the market play out, because I know I'm catering for myself in the short term and the long term, and it's a great way to be able to say, okay, now I've got two kids now, and I get to just spend loads of time with them now. Like, I'm not thinking about crypto all the time. It's kind of wonderful. Um, and that's just kind of how I want my life to be. And yeah, so
Beautiful.
make a plan.
Beautiful. And yeah, hit him up. Go chat with Lewis if you want to hear more about that, because I know that's your main business and you help a lot of people do that. And you seem to be more active on Instagram. Where should we send people to track you? Obviously, in YouTube, you're big, but things change at all there, or?
No. So YouTube's about to get a lot more serious. Um, Really, what I end up doing is getting burnt out. Feeling like I'm repeating content. I don't want to do that. Don't want to participate in repetition. Um, but what starting this week and next week and the week after, I've got videos all ready for that. Um, the thing is, on Instagram, I'm sharing a different things on Instagram. So I'm not. It's not like you're not going to get the same thing on Instagram as you get on YouTube. So it depends where you are. If you like scrolling through reels and stuff, then Instagram. But YouTube's always going to be my main thing.
Beautiful. And we'll put out a couple of reels, everybody, and move you from Instagram over to YouTube. And yeah, give him a follow on Instagram. He's in my story as we speak. So, well, you're not going to see it. It's delayed. But yes, you'll be reshared in the story. So you'll be able to find him. Thanks so much, Lewis. It's been terrific. And we'll have to do it again sometime.
Thank you, Nate. I'd love to.
Beautiful.